Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So, tonight's topic is about how to boost immunity naturally, and it's a really good time for us to talk about this because we are heading into flu season and the holidays. And so, before we get started, I urge you to consider why we get sick at this time of year. And obviously, the weather's changing, but is that the only factor in us being more susceptible to illness? Could it potentially be related to the food choices that we're making or the lifestyle practices that we are doing more of at this time of year? Because when you think about it, we are going from having potentially Halloween candy to pumpkin pies at Thanksgiving to holiday treats at Christmas, and maybe doing that more than one time. So you can see that there's a potential for us to be increasing our sugar intake, and sugar does suppress the immune system, and we'll be talking about that a little bit more. And you might also think, that we're really busy, that we're making plans, that we're thinking about gifts to get people, we're decorating the house, trying to get all these things together in such a short amount of time. Our stress levels tend to be up as well, and chronic stress can also suppress the immune system. And then on top of all that, a lot of times we're traveling to see friends and family. We're exposed to more pathogens than normal. So there's a lot of factors that come into play. And the good news is that we can really take a look at our diet and our lifestyle practices and going with choices that would help to boost our immunity. And I'm going to try to keep looking down because that's where my camera is, but if I look up, it's because that's where my notes are, and I want to make sure you get all the information. So I'm going to share with you 9 tips to strengthen your body's natural defenses against infection. My first area of focus is making sure you're getting adequate sleep because sleep and immunity are really closely connected. And the poorer quality of sleep you're getting, the more susceptible you are to illness. So, if you're an adult, I'd say go for 8 hours of sleep a night. If you are younger, you have children or teens, I'd say even more for them. I know we're thinking possibly, how can I get 8 hours of sleep a night? But sleep is such a priority. I mean, it's really when your body heals the most. So I encourage you to really prioritize your sleep, going for that 8 hours a night. And if you're having trouble sleeping, then I would encourage you to also make lifestyle and your environment very conducive to sleep. So, what does that look like? One is you are disconnecting from screens, whether it be your television, your computer, your phone, at least an hour before bed. I'd even go for more than that, say 2 hours. In addition to that, if you are used to maybe sleeping with your phone next to your bed, I would highly encourage you to either turn it off, put it on airplane mode, or keep it in the another room to protect yourself from potential electromagnetic field radiation exposure. And I could go on a whole nother conversation about that, but that's something to be mindful of as well. What can help is making a nice evening routine before bed. So, something that's going to let your body know that it's ready for sleep and time to wind down. So, that could be different for everyone, but some examples would be maybe reading or doing some gentle stretching, some meditation, some breathing exercises, really whatever for you that helps you to relax your body and really activate the parasympathetic system of your nervous system. Try going to bed at the same time every night. That'll also help to regulate your system as well. And then in the morning when you wake up, it would be really beneficial if you got some daylight, some sunlight, some fresh air within an hour of waking. So maybe that is going for a nice brisk walk around the neighborhood. Maybe it's just sitting outside and having something warm to drink. Another good time of day to get some sunlight or some daylight in is right at sunset. So in the morning at sunset, it will really help your body to connect with the circadian rhythm, and it will link, okay, now it's time. The day is starting, it's time to get up, or the day is ending, it's time to wind down and go to bed. Other things that are conducive to sleep is making sure you're sleeping in a dark room. You can use a face mask, and you can also keep the temperature pretty cool as well. Another thing that will help with sleep is making sure you're getting regular exercise. And so that's sleep. I could go on a whole nother Facebook Live about that, but we'll leave it at that for now. I'm going to give you a lot of information and tips today, and you can take what you feel inspired to do the most. So maybe that would be, turning off your phone, or maybe it's getting fresh air in the morning. You don't have to do everything. So just take what resonates with you, and then you can save the rest for another time. All right, so my next tip for you is to eat whole foods. So the first question is, what are whole foods? So whole foods are unprocessed or very minimally processed foods that are very close to their whole natural state as possible. So that would be like an apple, or celery, some nuts and seeds. Those are examples of whole foods. The opposite would be like processed foods. So anything that's packaged that basically doesn't look like it just came out of the ground or it's in its natural state. So it could be like a loaf of bread, a bag of chips, even like bottled juices and things like that. Those would be processed as well. So, what those whole foods contain are antioxidants that help to decrease inflammation. When there is chronic inflammation, it does suppress the immune system. Whole foods are also high in fibers, so they feed your microbiome. The microbiome is the healthy gut in your bacteria. So the gut and your bacteria and your immunity, those are also closely linked as well, and we'll get into ways on how to support that a little later on. But you want to go for mostly veggies, I'd say, in this category, especially the ones that are high in vitamin C. Vitamin C can reduce the duration of the common cold, so go for leafy greens like collard greens, like parsley, bok choy, Swiss chard. Those would be really great. In general, I always tell clients go for 1/2 your plate or more of veggies, but really try to work your way up to 2/3 or 3/4 of your plate. Raw nuts and seeds are another whole food that is really great. You want to be mindful with your portion on those, because even though nuts and seeds are really good for you, you don't want to overdo it on them as well. So what I'd say is one portion would be whatever you can fit in a closed palmful, and go for like 2 to 4 palmfuls a day, depending on your size. We can always use nutrition response testing in that aspect to kind of quantify what would be the right amount for your body for that day. Okay, so in general, while whole foods are really great for your health, everyone is different. So there's still may be the case that your body might be sensitive to certain foods in that category. I see with a lot of clients, for example, nightshades being a food category that people are sensitive to. Those are the vegetables that grow in the moonlight, like potatoes, eggplant, peppers, tomatoes, that type of thing, even certain nuts and seeds like cashews or walnuts, other vegetables like cauliflower, spinach, kale. Those can be kind of hit or miss with someone, so that's where nutrition response testing can really be supportive and beneficial in identifying what foods your body specifically is sensitive to. Okay? All right. So the next tip I have for you is to eat healthy fats. So I already touched on this already, but chronic inflammation can suppress the immune system, and healthy fats such as olive oil, salmon, chia seeds are highly inflammatory and may naturally combat illnesses. So in this category, I'd say go for raw fats over heated fats, or cold fats over heated fats. Okay, and you can think of it like this. So you have cold fats such as raw olive oil that hasn't been heated in a pan, raw nuts and seeds, avocado or avocado oil that hasn't been heated. And then you can think of heated fats as like putting that oil in a pan and then heating it up, or going for like the roasted seeds. Heated oils, you can think of like anything that's been fried. So if you have like chips, those are going to have heated oils. Fried chicken is going to have some heated oils most likely. So in our culture and like our usual way of eating, we tend to have like a high amount of heated fats, and we don't have enough of the raw fats, and it's really important to find the balance between the two, if not even have more of the cold fats. So I'd say really work on, if you're having salads, don't be shy with the avocado oil. Have avocado instead of like butter or mayonnaise in certain foods and dishes and that type of thing. But yeah, just be mindful of that, and just start to notice when you might be having heated fats and when you might be having those cold raw fats. With seeds, another helpful tip to help you absorb the minerals more readily or more efficiently is if you soak your seeds. So something like a chia pudding would be really good, soaking those seeds overnight. You can even just soak them for a half hour in some like unsweetened nut or seed milk, and you can drink it instead of waiting for it to be a pudding. That would be an option too. If you have buckwheat as a hot cereal, soak those seeds overnight. They'll be easier to digest that way. Or if you're getting like the seeds at a grocery store, you can go for the sprouted varieties, and basically those have been soaked already, and that would be really good. My next tip is to eat fermented foods. So, fermented foods are rich in beneficial bacteria called probiotics. And when you have healthy gut bacteria, your immune cells can differentiate between normal healthy cells and harmful invader cells. So, your gut microbiome again plays a big role in your immunity by being able to help your body differentiate between the two. So, what are some examples of fermented foods? So, one that works really well, it's really mild, it's high in fiber, high in water content, so it's good for regulating your bowels, is sauerkraut. And the way that I eat sauerkraut usually is I just put like a big dollop of it in my salad. I feel like it's like the easiest way for me to get it, and I'll also use some of the juice as a dressing along with olive oil, a lot of it, and then sea salt. But you can put it on avocado toast, you can put it on a sandwich, you can have it with like sausage or meats or whatever. There are other fermented foods as well, like if you go for a yogurt, and I would say like a sheep or a goat yogurt, or an unsweetened nut and seed yogurt. Again, nutrition response testing can really come into play as to what your body would like in that case. Sometimes dairy is going to work for people, and sometimes it won't. Goat kefir would work well too. You could do a sugar-free kombucha, but again, go sugar-free, because the thing with kombucha, it's good, but it tends to be high in sugar, especially if there's fruit juices associated with it. And let's see here. Okay, so the next one is limit added sugars. So, what do I mean by added sugars? Okay, so it might be what the obvious is. So that's like your white cane sugar, your maple sugar, your honey, agave, and whatnot. But you can also think of sugars as refined carbs. So that's going to be like your wheat bread, your cookies, your chips, your bottled juices. And this is a really interesting fact, and I may say it twice just so that you can let it soak in for a second, but sugar decreases the effectiveness of your immune cells, which help to fight infection, up to 50%. And that's after 1 to 2 hours after eating the sugar. This effect can last up to 5 hours. So if you think about that for a second, sugar decreases the effectiveness of your immune cells by 50% for up to 5 hours. So imagine if you are continuing to eat sugar throughout the day, your effectiveness of your immune cells is basically going to be up at 50% or up to 50% effective all throughout the day. So just something to keep in mind of, we think something is, oh, it's not so bad, or it's not going to hurt us. And I'm not saying that we need to be like perfect all the time or anything like that, but it's just really, we need to find ways to kind of mitigate that harm that we can do on our bodies. So you can go for some low glycemic sugars.
Something went wrong.
Stevia
Please try
is
again.
one, monk fruit is another, coconut sugar is another. Even with these, you want to make sure that when you're purchasing these things at the grocery store, that you're checking the ingredients list, and like that it's just stevia or it's just monk fruit and there's no additives in it, because a lot of times that's going to be the case too. So we really got to be proactive and advocate for our own health. And I am like a geek at the grocery store. Like, it's one of my favorite things to do. I always go with the list and I will read the label on everything, partly for myself, partly for research for my clients. But it's so interesting, to see you have all this marketing on packaging, and then you have this like long list of ingredients, for things that are claimed to be healthy. So really to encourage you to read all the labels, especially on your packaged food, because you just learn so much about like what's going into your body, and the effects that it can have, and what choices that you can make for yourself in those situations. Okay, sugars can also contribute to heart disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes, all of these which can suppress the immune system. So if you are noticing that you have sugar cravings, I would say make sure that you're eating and drinking enough. A lot of times when we are hydrated and we're satiated, our sugar cravings aren't going to be as high. So you want to be going for foods that will satiate you, such as proteins, healthy fats, vegetables, drinking water throughout the day. Okay, all right. My next tip is to engage in moderate exercise. So, what is moderate exercise? It's not necessarily going to a spin class or going to a HIIT class, but it's things like brisk walking, bicycling, jogging, swimming, and maybe some light hiking. It'll help to reduce inflammation, and it'll also help your immune system or your immune cells to regenerate more regularly. So the standard recommendation is to go for at least 150 minutes of brisk or moderate exercise a week. So that's about 50 minutes for 5 days. And if you're thinking to yourself, no way, like I don't have time for that, then you don't have to go from like 0 to 100. It's another thing I always tell my clients, like, you start small. So maybe what is feasible for you is getting out and walking for 10 minutes. And then maybe you do that 2 days a week, or maybe you move it up to 20. So there's a lot of steps in between that you can do. And it's also a great way to manage stress. So imagine you had like a long, crazy day at work. Imagine how much better you would feel if you were just to take 10 minutes for yourself, get some fresh air, walk outside. Your immune system will also thank you. Okay, so next is staying hydrated. So, drinking more water doesn't necessarily mean that you have a less risk of getting sick, but dehydration can make you more susceptible to illness. So that's why we want to stay hydrated. So you want to go for half your body weight in ounces a day. So say you're 150 pounds, you want to go for 75 ounces or more. I have a lot of clients say, but I'm just not thirsty. And you are, though. So trust me, and just drink even when you're not thirsty. You want your urine to be a pale yellow. And if you are working out, if you're working outside, if you live in a hot climate, then you want to make sure that you are probably drinking a little bit more. So a few things you can do to be mindful of this are, I always say start with your day with a tall glass of water, just to kind of give you that kickstart. So you can leave like a tall glass of water by your nightstand, just like down it first thing when you wake up. You can also have like a water bottle that you carry with you, and that way, if you know how many ounces are in that water bottle, you'll know, okay, I need to drink like 3 of these or 4 of these, depending on the size. And then you can also set small goals, like before breakfast, I need to drink 1 water bottle, and before lunch, I need to drink 2, and I need to drink 3 before dinner. So those are really great tools you can use as well. And if you're feeling dehydrated, or even thirsty, I have a little trick for you. So if you put a pinch of like a good quality salt, like Himalayan salt or sea salt, in your water, and then you drink it, it's going to help you to absorb it faster and stay hydrated for longer. So it's really good if you're already feeling like you're dehydrated to add a little pinch of salt to your water. And why is that? It's because the minerals in the salt help your cells to actually put the water into the cell. If you are drinking tons of water and you don't have the minerals you need to absorb that water, it's really just going in and out. So that's why minerals are so important. I mean, it's like one reason they're so important. Again, this is another way that nutrition response can really be supportive. Nutrition response testing can be supportive in that we can test to see if the body needs minerals, and then we can test to see what composition of minerals would work best. All right, I touched on this a little bit, but I'm going to get into it more. So, managing stress levels. Chronic stress can promote inflammation and imbalances in immune cell function. So I think of handling stress in 2 ways. You can either reduce the source of the stress, or you can find ways to mitigate the stress that you're experiencing. So what do I mean by that? So one is, reducing the source of your stress. So a lot of times I feel like it comes down to having boundaries in place, and I know that's easier said than done, but let's say you have someone in your life, whether it be like a friend or a family member or whoever, that just kind of like brings you down and stresses you out. Like, maybe consider what type of relationship you want to have them, and maybe it would be in your best benefit to have a little bit more space between you two. It could be boundaries at work. So making sure, like, okay, I'm leaving work at work, or I'm going to be done by 6 p.m. in the evening, so I have time to do the things that I need to do for myself. Things like that. So I would encourage you to take a look at those areas that maybe are a little bit out of balance, or just kind of like bringing you down, and like, what can you do to kind of establish those boundaries for yourself so that you're taken care of. Obviously, we want to take care of other people and be like really good at our work and whatnot, and I totally get that too. But you have to start with you, and taking care of yourself. And from that place of taking care of yourself, you're going to be able to take care of your family better. You're going to be able to perform at work better. It's really going to bleed into like all the other areas of your life. Okay, and then the second half of that is finding ways to mitigate your stress. So, mindfulness practices like yoga, which I'm biased about because I'm a yoga instructor, but yoga, meditation, breathing exercises, those can all help to mitigate our stress levels. Exercising, that's a good one for people too, especially with a lot of high energy. But what I will say is, oh, and also, sorry, before I say that, just like getting outside, getting fresh air, listening to music. There are, calling a friend. There are so many ways that we can, cope with stress in like a beneficial way. I know sometimes with clients, it can be the case where they're stressed or they're anxious, and they're more likely to eat poorly, eat sugar, eat junk food, and that's a coping mechanism, and I recognize that. But I encourage you to consider like, what is something you can do for yourself in that moment that is going to help you deal with that stress, but also is going to be beneficial for you. And I just want to give one example more, just in more depth, but like I think like breath work is so powerful. And if you just like for right now take a moment to take like a big inhale through your nose and then exhale, sigh it out through your mouth, and just let your shoulders and everything soften, there's an opportunity to like shift the energy like right away. I just think it's so powerful. So sometimes we, in a moment, like we can't hop into a yoga class or we can't go for a run, or but if we have like a few seconds, if we have a minute just to like focus on our breath, it can be so beneficial, so game changing. Like we can go from like a downward spiral to literally like reversing that spiral up in a positive direction, and we have complete control over doing that. Okay, and in addition to all that, you can also consider seeking support from a licensed counselor or therapist to help managing your stress. All right, this is my last one. So it's to consider whole food supplements. Okay, so you might be wondering, what are whole food supplements? Okay, and I want to explain like the opposite of that first, so maybe you'll have a good understanding in that regard. So there are what are called synthetic supplements or synthetic vitamins. These synthetic vitamins or supplements, they're made from chemicals to mimic the natural way our body absorbs nutrients from foods, but it actually makes it more difficult for the body to absorb and can even lead to health issues. That's because the body doesn't recognize them as food. But with whole food vitamins, these are actually condensed and concentrated versions of food. So it's like concentrated vegetables, concentrated fruits, and whatnot. And our body recognizes them. It recognizes them as like bioavailable to use them, and they get absorbed the way that they're meant to. So I would highly recommend, if you're doing supplements, get really high quality supplements. We love Standard Process here. They're all whole food. They're made on a farm. We know where the ingredients are coming from. In terms of immunity, some good ones to look at are vitamin C and zinc, which can reduce the duration of the common cold. Vitamin D deficiency may increase the risk of getting sick. So to combat that or to counteract that, you want to make sure you are sufficient in vitamin D. And I would also recommend going outside, getting some sunlight. Another one that's good is echinacea. Echinacea supports the immune system. It's particularly good for respiratory health as well. And if you are curious to know what supplements are going to work well for you, I would also strongly suggest trying out nutrition response testing or working with a practitioner in that regard. As I think, I hear from a lot of clients who've come in and they've been using and trying different supplements. It's it's hard to kind of navigate that. It's the same thing with foods, I feel. There's all this information out here, like eat this, take that, whatnot. And it may work really well for someone, and that's great, but it may not be needed for someone else. It may just also be harmful. So that's a great way. Nutrition response testing, muscle testing can work, can see if your body responds positively or negatively to something. So those are my immune boosting health tips for today. I hope you enjoyed this talk. Again, take what resonates with you. If you felt inspired to kind of add a food or lifestyle practice in your day-to-day life, I think that's awesome. You can feel free to revisit this at a later time. Maybe something else will spark your attention. I do want to invite you to an initial consult at Natural Healing Center with me. If you mention this post, then you'll receive $50 off your first consultation. We'll be doing these Facebook Lives every Thursday at 5:30. In the next couple weeks, I'll be talking about environmental toxins in the home, weight loss. If there are any other topics you'd like for me to discuss, feel free to leave those in the comments, and I'll be sure to have a look and make sure I can get you that information. But thank you so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate your time, and I hope to see you again on here soon. Thanks so much.